Welcome. You're listening to Doopy Deep with Dr. Nikki. This is the place where witty, irreverent, opinionated perspective meets serious, fact-based discussion. Featuring our host, Dr. Nikki Coleman, and her co-host, Tomas Bell. You can also join in the discussion during our live tapings by following us on Spreaker.com. Now, the doctor is in. It's time to get Doopy Deep.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Doopy Deep with Dr. Nikki and I
am Dr. LaWanda Hill.
So we have a special guest today. I'm so excited. We have the illustrious, I've always wanted to introduce someone in that way, the illustrious Dr. LaWanda Hill joining in the conversation today. And we got our janky bootleg co-host somewhere over there in Brooklyn somewhere. Wait, hello, you there? What?
I am currently in the background working on my own theme song. It's the co-host theme for your show.
You don't get your own theme song. Mm-hmm. That's why there's a
I'm just going to jack a little Lisa and Cult Jam with full force. Can you feel Tomas is in the house? Something like that.
I cannot.
Can you feel he about to turn it out? You feeling it now? See, now you want your stuff remixed. You see?
I quit exactly because your theme song can't be flyer than mine.
Fire!
Oh my God!
And now,
welcome to the craziness, Dr. Hill.
Dr. Hill. I don't think you're ready for this next hour of.
I don't know. I'm trying to get my mind together. I'm trying to know what you're ready for.
Just stay sex positive and you'll be fine. Right?
Not a problem. Not a problem at all.
So thank you for that lovely but awkward segue. Today we're going to talk about sex positivity. In specific, LaWanda and I want to talk with you guys about a little bit about our journey to really coming to understand sex positivity, about why we think it's such a important concept for women to wrap their brains around and to fully embrace, and a little bit about an upcoming workshop. It's going to be our inaugural launch of a series of workshops that we are planning around sex positivity. And so our workshop is called Sex Positive You. That's SEXPOSITIVE capital U, because we want it to be a really, really, our intention going forward with this first one and subsequent others is that it really is an opportunity for there to be broad education about women's sexuality, as well as an opportunity for our participants to get educated about themselves. So we are thinking about it as a really in-depth, intimate, hopefully for when needed and when necessary, healing, but empowering series of workshops. So that's why we have our special guest here today. Tomas, he's scared. I just want you to know that, LaWanda.
I said, no, nope. I'm not scared. I just don't see a place for me in a conversation about women's sexuality.
And so I appreciate your.
No, seriously, I'm here to support.
I know you're being serious.
I'm absolutely here to support you, but I think this is an important conversation.
And I agree. And I mean, I don't need you to mansplain anything. I don't need you to be the highlight.
You don't need me to mansplain your female parts to you? You sure?
No. I would appreciate it if you did not do that. I'm sure. At the same time, I don't know. I feel like you might have some interesting viewpoints on the conversation. So I don't want you to completely feel like you are excluded from the conversation, but I do appreciate you wanting to take a back seat.
How about we say like I'm going to leave and go take a shower, right? I'm here.
Go run some errands.
I'm going to run down to the post office, pick up some stamps.
So who's going to be crazy? hearing him say he's going to be present, but not he's going to kind of jump in and jump out is appropriate, Lamont? So you're agreeing to not completely be silent.
Oh, no, I won't be silent. Okay. I don't think I can be silent, actually.
That is true. Okay, so now that we've kind of fully oriented ourselves, let's talk a little bit about who Dr. LaWanda Hill is. If you want to introduce yourself to the people, because they know me and they know way too much about me as it is at this point.
I am a jovial, extroverted young lady from northern Louisiana, from a little small town known as Bastrop, Louisiana, who has made my way. The short story of a long story is has made my way to Houston and made Houston home. And here I practice as a psychologist and professor professionally. But beyond that, I just think that I definitely enjoy being an educator and provocative and talking about things that usually people are a little bit reticent to chat about. And so you can find me doing podcasts like this. You can find me wanting to do workshops. As you mentioned earlier, we have our Sex Positive You coming up. You can find me in the classroom being provocative in nature in terms of content. I just think that that's who I am. Beyond that, I could go into the nuts and bolts of where I studied and where I work and all that good stuff. But I think it sums me up to say that I'm pretty jovial, extroverted, personality who likes to be provocative in bringing topics to the forefront that historically people like to push underneath the rug.
I would agree with those things. Excuse me. I'm sorry, guys. A little bit more information I think would be helpful to know is that LaWanda was actually one of my doctoral students, and that's where she got her degree from the University of Houston. You got to shout out Go Cougs.
LaWanda,
yes, of course. You can't leave that part of the story out.
Go Cougs.
Go Cougs. And so I've had the really, really good fortune of being able to develop and cultivate and maintain some affirming and healthy and mutually beneficial relationships with several of my advisees. And LaWanda is in a special category all of her own. And that piece about you being extroverted and being a provocateur, I think really stands out to me. So LaWanda is the kind of person that won't let herself go unnoticed, especially if it's something that she's particularly passionate about. And she was very passionate about graduate school. She was very passionate about getting her doctorate degree. And the other piece about LaWanda that I also think is important, and probably why our relationship is transcended in a different way, is that she's also... I find you to be a very hard worker, in the sense that there's not you don't come across many challenges that you don't defeat, and so there's a persistence there. And so I do agree that you can be provocative, but I don't think you're a provocateur just for provocateur's sake. I think it's always with the intent for elevation or connection. Whether it's elevation in your own thought, elevation for somebody else's, or the opportunity to build a relationship, et cetera, et cetera. And so I think those pieces have gotten us to where we are today in terms of our working relationship. But then the other piece is that let me add this last piece. So I have the benefit of having served as a mentor in some way. And so I've had the benefit because of that role to kind of see you evolve. And in that evolution, I think that from the outside looking in, is that you've moved from a person that recognized and valued the importance of one's sexuality in women's lives to a person that is promoting sex positivity for women. And I think there's a distinction there. That's the way I see it. I don't know if you would articulate it in that same way. But I think it might be helpful to talk a little bit about how you got to this place of even embracing. That's something to look up. Embracing this concept of sex positivity. How is it that you personally define sex positivity? Why is that so important to you?
Okay. Well, number one, thank you for all of those lovely words. If you can recall any of them, send them to me so I can put them in like my bio, because I think that was like a really pretty good, description of me. I would say that, let's see, I mean, I don't even know where to begin. I think that I have moved from embracing and valuing sexuality to trying to promote it for someone else, because, and I think the journey is as much as it is selfless, it could be selfish, because I really believe that this is something that I wish I would have had. So I think that's been my journey with sex positivity. So growing up as somebody who is, as you can imagine, very extroverted and very aware, I was very in tune to my body changing, and I went from like crying if a boy touched me, like, oh my God, he touched me, like literally, like I felt defiled, to like truly embracing boys and, wanting to be intimate with them and all that kind of stuff, and just really not knowing how to navigate it. And so I think because I didn't know how to navigate it, I made a lot of choices that weren't healthy for me, in terms of like my physical health, yes, but for sure my emotional health. I think that if I would have had the tools, if I would have been socialized into sexuality in a more healthy, positive way, as in this is something that is natural, this is something that is innate, this is something that will take a level of maturity to be able to navigate, this is something that will not be without consequences, this is something that will not be without both positive and negative consequences, I could have approached the journey differently, and it probably wouldn't have taken me so long to arrive at a healthier place. And so that I was amid that. Actually, when I reached out to you, I was very persistent when I was graduating undergrad and trying to figure out doctoral programs to go to. Had really no idea in terms of the rigor and focus that it would take to pick a research topic and go after it. So when I saw your research interest on the website about hip-hop scripts and sexuality, I had no idea what that was. I just saw sexuality, and I knew it was something that, had been a major part of me, but I was kind of ignorant in trying to figure out how to navigate it. It just seemed like the next step. And I tell people all the time, I don't know if I chose sexuality or it chose me. Like, listen, and so I think it's kind of been one of those things that wherever I went, there it was. And so it was in front of me, like, oh, okay, this is a Black woman who's in Houston, my sister in Houston. One of my mentors was like, you need to reach out to her. So I reached out, and then I got there and started to understand a little bit more about your work and your research. And then it started to make sense, like, so the way that I've been navigating this has been informed by media. Okay, there's like one piece of the puzzle. And so it kind of was the beginning. That's why I say it's kind of selfish and selfless, because at the beginning of the journey, I was just trying to figure myself out. And then I started to understand, there's more than one person or entity or institution or organization that has kind of informed and shaped my scripts for navigating sexuality. And I started to see the religious piece, which was what's much more salient at the time. And then when I started to really deconstruct that and to see how inherently some of those messages were destructive or not as realistic for me and where I was, it's like, this is another entity that has shaped my beliefs. And then I started to look at the parental piece, and then that's where, if you remember, my dissertation came along. So I wanted to look at these pieces.
Still waiting for you to publish it. Yeah. I'll put it's on the record. It's on the record. You should have known it was coming. Still waiting for you to publish it.
I'm going to publish it on the record. I just have to make some time. After Sex Positive Youth is it? Okay. I'll publish it. So, I just started to deconstruct all of these things, and so then it started to dawn on me, damn, you have to work really hard to kind of understand sexuality, and then you have to work even harder to kind of undo some of the negative messages that you've gotten about something that I think in its purest form is great and beautiful, but kind of has been, it could be tainted. So Akila, who one of your former advisees and one of my good friends, hit me up about 2 years ago about a conference at Columbia. And she's like, hey, let's talk about sex positivity. I had no idea what it was at the time. And so when I researched it, it's like, and that kind of introduces my definition. It's like sex positivity to me is this idea that we should be socialized around sex and sexuality in a positive way. And whatever consent we give